Hello, bookworms. Welcome back to the Bonafide Bookworm. And if you're here to read along with me and improve your English. Or maybe you're here for a book review, a movie review, or show review, because I think I need to adjust what I'm doing as far as the description. I'm also trying to push myself more this way so that when I put little things up, it'll fit nicely beside me, hopefully. I don't have any reviews right now, though, because I just don't have any. But we're just going to jump into the book because we left off at a critical point. Our survivors, the ship has gone down, they are in the Zodiac, and they now realize they have been surrounded by sharks. So that's where we're at. We are on, again, Untamed Seas by Deborah Scaling Kiley and Meg Noonan. And we are on page 107, chapter 6. Fins broke the water all around us. For every shark that I dove, two more seemed to surface. I couldn't believe I had just been in that water, spent maybe 18 hours in that water with my legs hanging down and with Meg's open cuts. If the sharks had been there all along, why hadn't they attacked? And if they hadn't been there, why had they suddenly appeared, and in such huge numbers? What drew them to us now? We watched them circle while the Zodiac shuddered with the motion of our trembling bodies. A wave picked us up, and we listed precariously to one side before righting ourselves. It was vital that we keep the dinghy balanced. The idea of turning turtle was unbearable. We have to find a way to stabilize this thing, I said. If we had some kind of sea anchor, Brad said. But what did we have to use? 5 bodies and the clothes on our backs and an open boat. What if we could get one of those floorboards out? I studied the 3 aluminum boards that covered the bottom of the dinghy. There was also a small wooden board in the bow covering a storage space. I reached into the bow and was able to pop the wooden board right out. All right, Brad said. Brad and I talked it over. If we could run the wire through the hole in the board and drag it behind us, maybe it would make the dinghy more stable and keep us closer to the area where the Coast Guard expected to find us. Brad rigged the wire to the board and tossed it over the side. I waited for the next wave to come, eager to see how it worked. And then wham! The dinghy was yanked backward and we all went sprawling. We saw the dorsal fin of a big shark streaking away from us, dragging the Zodiac with it. The shark had gone after the board like a bluefish striking a lure. Before I could scream, the dinghy had stalled as the fin kept moving, and I knew he had spat the board out and swum away. We all lunged for the line at the same time, almost flipping the dinghy in our panic. Mark got hold of the wire and pulled it in. The big shark surfaced again, just off our port side, rising from the blue-black depths like an enemy sub. He was a monster, longer than the Zodiac. Get out of here, you fucker, Mark shouted, raising the board over his head like a sledgehammer and bringing it down on the shark's back. Stop, Meg and I both screamed. Are you crazy? Brad said as he ripped the board from Mark's hands. You idiot, I said. Leave it alone, John said. If we leave them alone, maybe they'll leave us alone, like bees, you know? Oh, sure, Meg, just like bees, I wanted to say. Bees and sharks. God, we were losing it. I looked from one blue-lipped, pale-drawn face to the next. I was sure I looked as bad as they did. I closed my eyes, trying to get away from their death masks, from the sharks, from everything. I knew a few sailors who had to be rescued at sea, but somehow I had never imagined myself in that position. Bad things happened to other people. People who didn't know what they were doing. People who were unlucky. The boats I had been on in the past had seemed charmed somehow. I had always felt that no matter what happened, no matter how dicey things got, I would make it through. But not this boat. I played back the chain of events in my mind. From the moment John and I left Southwest Harbor, I had had misgivings. Why hadn't I just listened to my instincts? There were plenty of signs of trouble. Meg showing up and the unreliable engine and the whole thing with Mark. But I had tried to get off. My God, if only I had stood my ground with Newberger. I could have just packed up and walked away. And now, here we were, our legs entangled, our lives entangled. Brad and I at the bow, John and Meg in the stern, Mark in the middle, in a heaving rubber boat. Rub-a-dub-dub, 5 men in a tub, I said out loud. What did you say? Brad asked, looking at me as if I had lost my mind. I dipped my hand in the water and felt its warmth. If I could just climb back in for a minute and feel that warmth again. Then I remembered the sharks and jerked my hand back to my lap. Brad, how fast do you think sharks attack? I asked. Why? I was just thinking how nice it would be if I could get back in the water just long enough to warm up, like 2 seconds. You've got to be kidding, Brad said. I'm serious. Let her go, Mark said. We'll room for the rest of us. Are you okay? The way Brad said that frightened me. Maybe the cold was already digging its gnarled fingers into my brain. I'm so cold, Meg said, and wrapped her arms around her knees. A gray bird was overhead, riding the stiff air currents. He dipped a wing and wheeled, then dove straight for us, lighting on one of the Zodiac's pontoons right next to Meg. It startled all of us. Jesus, Mark said. The bird stared at us, and we stared at it. That's food, I thought, but before I could begin to think of a way to catch it, the bird cocked its head, shifted its knobby webbed feet, and lunged at Meg, striking her in the face with its beak. Oh my God, Meg cried, and brought both arms across her head while John shooed the bird away. Are you all right? I asked. Is it bleeding? Meg asked, pulling her hand away from her cheek. No, John said. Fucking bird, Mark said. I don't believe that. He thought we were something to eat, Brad said. If we don't find a way to get warm, I thought, we will be just something to eat. We need to cover ourselves to seal in what's left of our body heat. Maybe if we put some water in the dinghy, our bodies would warm it up? What are we supposed to scoop it up with? Mark asked when I made my suggestion. We could just use our hands, I said. Right, Mark said sarcastically. It's worth a try. John, don't you think it is? Meg said. We all tried splashing water into the boat, but after a frenzied few minutes, I knew it was futile. All we had done was lure a dozen more sharks closer to the Zodiac. One rubbed up against the dinghy, and I could feel the vibration of his rough skin against the rubber. Brad had another idea. He thought there might be a way to open the drainage valve and let water into the boat. I thought that only worked to let water out, I said. I know, but there has to be a way to rig it to stay open for a few minutes, Brad said. And what if we can't get it closed? Oh, this was Mark, sorry. And what if we can't get it closed, Mark said. I know y'all need my bad English accent. Brad didn't reply. He scrambled over everyone's legs and started working on the plug. He couldn't get it to turn. John gave it a try, then Brad again. His face reddened as he put all his strength into it. Son of a bitch, Brad said, and fell backward. The damn thing won't snap right off. Now we couldn't even open the valve. Maybe we can pry the aluminum boards up and use them for shelter, I said. Maybe we could even use them to signal. We all agreed that every inflatable we had ever seen had an air-filled bladder that ran down the center of the boat to form a keel, and that it probably kept the floorboards in place too. Now that we had removed the wooden board from the bow, that end of the bladder was exposed. So if we deflate the bladder, we ought to be able to get the boards out, I said, and the others nodded. But what could we use to puncture the rubber bladder? We had nothing sharp, except our teeth. Brad and I began taking turns chewing at the rubber, gnawing at it like dogs. It was hard and taut, and I found it almost impossible to get even the smallest pinch between my teeth. It was difficult to control their chattering, but I found that if I bit down hard enough, I could work the rubber back and forth. Little by little, Brad and I made a divot in the bladder and finally broke through, but only a tiny amount of air hissed from the minute hole. By then, we had realized that the floorboards were held tight by the sides of the Zodiac, not just the bladder, and they were not going to budge as long as we were still floating. The life raft, Mark said, and pointed ahead of the Zodiac. I saw nothing but waves and sky. Where? Paddle. Where? Paddle, Mark repeated. Yeah, I think I see it, John said, sitting forward, then leaning over the side and stroking madly with one arm. I don't, Brad said. It's over there, Mark said. I wanted desperately to believe him. I scanned the uneven horizon as we rode the swells. We paddled after the phantom raft for 10 minutes or so, never getting another glimpse of it, never getting anywhere at all. Brad and I quit. Mark and John continued paddling for a few more minutes, still convinced they had seen something. The effort had wiped me out, and I sank back against the bow and started to cry. So much energy expended, and so little to show for it. I let despair wash over me. We would never live to see the Coast Guard. They might find our raft tomorrow or the next day, but we'd all be dead. I stared into the water. Something was floating just off the bow. It drifted closer, and I saw that it was a clump of sargasso weed. We were indeed in the Gulf Stream, and then I thought I saw a way for us to get some warmth. Seaweed, I shouted. We'll cover ourselves in seaweed. As I lunged to grab a handful, a couple of small dorsal fins broke the water 20 yards away. And get your arms chewed off gathering it, John said. Not if someone fins off the sharks while I pull it in, I said. I don't want that slimy shit on me, Mark said. Fine, freeze to death, I said. Don't you two ever stop, Meg said. I can't take this anymore. Brad said he would help. He got ready to beat off the sharks while I reached into the water. I grabbed a mass of weed and felt a surge of pride and optimism as I pulled it in. This might actually work. I paddled a little to bring us to the next patch of weed, then reached in and grabbed it. With every clump of sargasso came all kinds of debris, pieces of styrofoam and plastic, even a length of polypropylene line, artifacts of humanity, bleached and battered by the sea. I wondered where this stuff had come from, how far it had traveled. What had become of the people who had sipped coffee from this broken styrofoam cup, or looped the end of this line around a cleat? Again, I asked if Mark and John would help pull in weed. John reached over the side and got a clump. Mark scowled. You gather it up. It's your stupid idea. Are you at all interested in trying to make it out of here alive, or are you going to sit there and bitch? I shouted. Meg winced. Debbie, come on, Brad said. Leave him alone. He doesn't feel like doing it. When we had a big pile of the mustard-colored weed in the boat, I spread it out on top of my legs and torso and tried to cover my arms. Thick and rubbery, it looked as if it could be decent insulation. Meg, John, and even Mark started covering themselves. Brad stayed up on the side of the dinghy, appearing totally absorbed in trying to keep it balanced. Throwing his head back, he yelled, Fuck you, God. Fuck you, you fucking bastard. Yeah, fuck you, motherfucker. Mark joined in. No, they didn't mean it. Don't listen to them, God. I prayed he hadn't heard them, or if he had, that he understood they didn't know what they were saying. If we ever needed God on our side, it was now. I had always believed in God in a vague Sunday school way. Now I found myself talking to him one-to-one and listening for a reply. He could see us. He had a plan, a reason for putting us through this nightmare. I had to believe that was true. Is this a test? I asked silently. Is this some sort of wake-up call? I hear it, okay? Just give me a break here. I've screwed some things up, I'll grant you that. But I have to tell you that I don't want to die. Whatever bad stuff I've done, I can't believe you would punish me this way. I pictured my mother getting the phone call and tried to imagine what she would do when she heard the news. She'd probably be devastated. Who would she blame for all the shit in her life if I were gone? No, Debbie, that's not fair. Don't think like that. I'm sorry, God. Look, I'm not going to try to bargain with you, but if you get me through this, I'll try to do better. I'll try to change. Is that why you're doing this to me? To get me to change my life? I will. I mean, I'll try. I don't want to die, but I'm so afraid to make promises I may not be able to keep. I'm just so tired. So tired. And we're going to stop there. Because that's a good stopping place. If you're following along, it's page 116, and it's got like a page break there. I know this was a shorter episode, but just got a lot to do today. Got to get to the gym, get my workout on, my fitness and such, and other little things that I have to get done. So I hope wherever you're at that y'all have a great day, week, month, year, wherever you're at. I hope it's great, and I hope y'all come back here. Have a great day. Bye.